Hello and welcome to the third part of our personal review of our 2025 Nova Scotia birding year. Before we head into July, we are just going to return to late June and a boat trip offshore of Pubnico. In part 2 we had presented some very nice razorbill images from that trip but had neglected the Atlantic puffins that also nest on these islands. So here are some Atlantic puffins from offshore Pubnico on the 27th of June, because everyone likes to see puffins. These breeding birds all have the big colourful bills. Some are carrying sand eels and one has a beak full of grass, probably to line the nest hole. Oh, and there were plenty of black guillemots there too. July got off to an interesting start with several indigo buntings inhabiting a length of road at Quinns Falls near Clyde River. Most indigo bunting sightings tend to be transitory, so these birds, hanging around and singing a lot, were to be quite a draw. The singing certainly alerted hopeful birders to their presence. A cedar waxwing in the same area was also worth a look. This raptor on a power line near Cranberry Head, Yarmouth, looked a little odd but was determined to be a red-tailed hawk. On the 19th of July, Mark headed out on a pelagic trip, operated out of Wedgeport. It had been a last-minute arrangement after reports of a lot of seabirds being present off this shore. There were no real rarities seen, but there were a number of nice pelagic species, including Corey's shearwater. The Corys was seen alongside great shearwaters. Great shearwaters are pretty common around our shores, but you generally have to be afloat to get good views. Another pretty common shearwater is the sooty shearwater, the darker bird seen here with a great shearwater. Rather less common is the Manx shearwater. Northern fulmars breed to the north of Nova Scotia and come south to the waters around the southern end of the province to overwinter. A Hudsonian whimbrel, the new name after our birds was split from Eurasian whimbrel, was feeding on the sandbanks of the inlet of Daniel's Head on the 22nd of July. A nice selection of short-billed dowitchers, one at least being unusually close and easy to photograph, were in the small pools edging the road to the island bait plant at Centreville, Cape Sable Island. Near the plant is a deeper pool, and here we found a green heron. Over at Shag Harbour, near the Evelyn Richardson Memorial Elementary School, is a shallow coastal pool that sometimes holds interesting birds. We took a look on the 23rd of July but found only the commoner birds, like killdeer, American black duck, semi-palmated and least sandpipers and a couple of song sparrows. August, and we are starting to see a build-up of visible warbler species. Breeding season is coming to an end and birds start to flock together, feeding up, ready for the long journey south. It always makes for an interesting time for birders. Red-breasted nuthatch, black and white warbler, American redstart, and magnolia warbler were amongst the species we recorded on a drive along the Blanche Peninsula on the 11th of August. The green heron was still occupying its pool on Island Bait Road, Cape Sable Island, on the 15th of August, although it could go missing for quite a while between sightings. A day trip out to Briar Island on the 17th of August yielded this bared sandpiper on the beach at Pond Cove. Ruby-throated hummingbirds started to become more visible in the garden at Clam Point. This female bird was enjoying nectar from a honeysuckle plant. A male bird preferred to rest in the apple tree after repeated visits to our hummer feeder. A slight turn into the light allowed him to really show off his ruby throat. Back in May, we had made a special trip up the Upper Clyde Road to find olive-sided flycatcher, so it was a special treat when a bird made a flying visit to the Clam Point yard on August 25th. Sunday Point near Yarmouth was to become a bit of a happy hunting ground in this quarter of the year. First up was a fine male Wilson's phalarope. I think we were particularly lucky with this bird as he was very confiding for us, wandering very close. We did keep to the car, the big red bird hide, while watching him wander around the edges of the pool and feeding actively. There is rather a lot of footage of this individual, but we make no apology for that. Also present here was a semi-palmated sandpiper. Being in Yarmouth, it wouldn't be a birding visit without taking a look down Chebogue Point Road, where we of course found lots of savannah sparrows. Then we headed across town and out to Pembroke, where we took a look at the beach along Helen Lucy Road, enjoying a nice flock of mixed shorebirds, with lots of semi-palmated plovers. We don't see too many of this species, ovenbird, in the yard, so this very visible individual was very welcome on the 31st of August. What do they say about September and autumn? The season of mists and mellow fruitfulness? Well, it might not be misty, but it was fruitful, with a blue-grey gnatcatcher appearing in the yard at Clam Point on the 1st. This species really isn't commonly seen in Nova Scotia, and every find is worth a look, so it was extra special to find one at home. Baltimore oriole, ruby-throated hummingbird, and song sparrow also popped up in the yard. A good start to the month. It became an even better start when Mark found a blue-winged warbler at Highland Heights, Cape Sable Island. This spot can often yield some interesting birds during migration. We headed back to Yarmouth on the 3rd of September. After the obligatory drive along Chebogue Point, we headed for Sunday Point and another good bird, a stilt sandpiper, in the same pools that the phalarope had graced. This time our target bird was sharing the pool with a lesser yellowlegs. We couldn't stay away from Yarmouth. We were back again on the 6th of September to take a look for a hooded warbler that had been seen in the farm garden at the end of Chebogue Point. It was a very finely plumaged adult male and a joy to watch. Of course, there were also a few commoner species around, like a common yellowthroat and a female belted kingfisher. The next day, another trip down the Blanche Peninsula had more commoner birds typical of the time of year, like palm and yellow-rumped warblers and a strangely contorted red-breasted nuthatch. A couple of visitors to Cape Island saw a strange gull that they couldn't identify, down at Daniel's Head. They posted a photo to Facebook a short while later, and it was then identified as a Franklin's gull. This was worth looking for, so we headed down to the beach to search for it on the 8th. There were a lot of shorebirds at the water's edge, including a number of American golden plovers. Here was an unusual gull, but it was actually an immature laughing gull, rare but not the gull we were looking for. We had walked quite a distance along the beach, scanning the gulls on the shoreline, when we actually found our prize. It was some distance away but luckily was making its way back towards us, picking along the water's edge. We watched it for quite some time, keeping an eye on the prize as other birders were on their way over. Luckily, it did not seem very bothered about human presence on the beach. We were keeping a respectful distance. The last thing we wanted to do was to spook the bird, but it did not even seem to get concerned when one of the local beach walkers powered past along the shoreline, between us and the bird. There we were, equipped with cameras, binoculars, and telescopes trained on the bird, and she went blithely past. We wondered if she had even considered that we were looking at something. Probably not. And why the excitement? Franklin's gull is very rare in Nova Scotia. There might be only one a year, if that. We had seen only one in the province, some years ago, a very distant view too, so this relatively close bird, showing well, was a treat. It was probably also the first documented Franklin's gull for Shelburne County, so quite a big thing really. If it stuck around, it would be popular with the twitchers. More importantly, it needed to stick around long enough for all our local birders to get a look. As it happened, a birding tour group were on the beach when we were returning to the car, and we were able to get them on to this interesting addition to their tour list. We were not done with beaches. A gull-billed tern had appeared at Cherry Hill Beach in Queens County. For some reason, we didn't set out for a look at this bird until early afternoon on the 11th of September, but we got there late afternoon and with plenty of light. A very short walk along the beach, scanning the skies, and the bird appeared, swooping over the dunes and then flying over our heads out to sea and back again. It wasn't going to land, so it provided a chance to practice some in-flight photography. It was very difficult to keep it in the viewfinder. This adult non-breeding gull-billed tern was another very rare visitor to Nova Scotia and well worth the journey to go and see it. Mark made a day trip to Briar Island on the 14th, picking up a buff-breasted sandpiper and also a look at the long-staying immature wood stork. On the 16th, we had a day birding around Yarmouth. Strickland Road has often proved a good spot for migrating birds, and so it was today, with good views of hermit thrush, chestnut-sided warbler, black and white warbler and red-eyed vireo. On the 22nd of September, we had another day of birding in Yarmouth County, this time exploring Abrams River and Comoes Hill. More common migrants, but still nice to see. We would enjoy them now, as it wouldn't be long before we would wave them off on their journey south. It is always nice to see a Nashville warbler. It isn't that common a species around here. European starlings were beginning to flock around the farm on Chebogue Point too. On the way home, we dropped in at Boyd Road on Argyle Head, where a clay-coloured sparrow had been reported. These are uncommon, but we generally get a few each year. This one was unusually obliging as it foraged along the road edge. A special treat was a female black-throated blue warbler, seen on September 25th. That and a very nice prairie warbler and a handsome Wilson's warbler rounded out our birding for September. That was it for the third quarter of 2025. Birds were definitely building up for migration south, and our winter birds would soon be arriving: geese, ducks, snowbuntings, finches and maybe even grosbeaks. The forecast was for a finch winter, because the cone crop wasn't going to be particularly good in the north. Would we see any of that avian bounty? Here is the book plug bit. Mark has 5 autobiographical books of bird and other stories from his 40-plus years of birding in the UK and Canada, all available as ebooks or paperbacks from Amazon. And he writes novels, some set in Nottingham, some in Nova Scotia, some in outer space. He gets around. All 19 are available from Amazon. Check out our birding travelogues too. Thanks for joining us for this wander through our birding memories of the third quarter of 2025. Don't forget to take a look at the first 2 videos in this series too. Please like and subscribe to make sure to get part 4, the descent to winter in Nova Scotia, and see what interesting species turned up in 2025. Why not check out our many birding trip videos on our YouTube channel? Thanks for watching.